All right, y'all. So let me just, before we get too deep into episode 15, let me just say I rewatched episode 14. I watched it last week, and I didn't make my content on it, unfortunately, because I had other things I was working on that day. But we dropped that earlier today, right before this episode aired. And where did episode 15 come from? This episode was insane. Okay, so first things first. Number one, animation. We got to talk about it. This was another S-tier animated episode. This episode, from start to finish, was as good as the opener animation quality. 11 out of 10. Fantastic. I watched it twice, just to make sure that criticism, or that opposite of criticism, was correct, and I did not see anything overly egregious. This was their A-team completely. I think there's one other episode that was even remotely like this. That was that first episode where Goku fought the third Tamagami. So, right out of the gate, fantastic episode. Amazing. Loved it. Even if narratively the episode might not have been the best of the best, I'm not even going to give it a score. Because this episode delivered in everything it needed to deliver. Now, the vast majority of this episode did two main things. Okay, it gave us the lore of that little eyeball, the third eye. If I was going to take points away from this, I would take points away for them having to cut away to explain the eye. We've seen that the third eye basically on Hybesa's belt this entire time. What's funny is in this episode it never seems to move, but we have seen it move before. It's really weird. Like it was sentient at one point, and now it's just kind of chilling. I don't know. Also, did you notice that on the Kempeitai and on all their ships and everything, their logo is the eye. So, like, the eye is obviously very important. But when they break away to explain the eye, it took me out of the episode ever so slightly. Not completely, but I get it. Like, they explained a lot. I think there was a better way to explain it. I think narratively, if I could take off a point for that, but I think the episode was so good otherwise, there's no need for me to take off a point. If I was to take off a point, I'd take off 1/10 of a point. Absolute tops. Instead of being a 10 out of 10 episode, it's a 9.9 out of 10 episode. It's just a phenomenal episode. So essentially, the third eye is kind of like essentially the Demon World's crown jewels ish, except instead of just being decorative. Detrimental's not a word, brain. Instead of just being decorative, it actually holds a lot of power and holds all this stuff. And essentially, what wound up happening is Dabura had Dabura or whatever had the eye stolen, had to take it to the third demon world where it was essentially lost. And then obviously Dabura took control over his father Abra. But yes, Abra Dabra, and yes, we had the Majin so it's Abra Ku Dabra. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's all there. So crazy, right? Just completely insane. So essentially, Hybeast was just out there one day chilling, and he found it. And that was it. He was kind of like on a hunting expedition and found it and was like, literally forced it into his belt, which I think is hilarious. And then later on in the episode, you find out that literally he just kind of gave up the belt because he's like, it's my favorite thing. But this random female appears out of nowhere. It's kind of vague as to whether or not she's not Dr. Arinisu, but clearly she's being controlled by Dr. Arinisu at some point. It's kind of vague as to how all that kind of went down. They don't really explain that well, so it's another point I could take away, but I'm not going to because of reasons. But essentially, she's like, I'll give you a kiss for the belt. And he's like, no, but I love your hat. I will give you the hat for the belt. And she's like, okay. Moderately insulted, but sure. And we already know Hybeast. It's just, he's weird as it is. So they kind of traded up, and so Hybeast no longer has the eye. Nobody else seems to understand except basically Goma and Degesu, and I guess to an extent Dr. Arinisu. I mean, obviously she's always kind of behind the scenes doing stuff. And meanwhile, our crew, when we left off last time, they were being chased by the Kempe Tai, and nothing has really changed. Except they're kind of overwhelmed. Now, let me just point out another narrative problem I did have that did take me out of the episode ever so slightly, and that was the power scaling of the episode. They kind of want us to believe that the Kempe Tai is as, like, more threatening than the Ginyu Force. Or, I guess, more threatening than all of Frieza's army, which I'm having a tough time with, right? Goku kind of deals with them like he deals with the Red Ribbon Army, but he has to go Super Saiyan at like 2 points in the episode, or at least 1 point towards the end. Still, it's hard for me to buy that the Kempe Tai is even remotely on the level of the Frieza Force. And even then, you had like Kui and those types of guys that, sure, Goku would have a problem with when he was a kid, but I just don't see the Kempe Tai at being that level of threat, especially when they have to use guns. I'm sorry. Well, we're far enough in the episode. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So yeah, it did take me out of it a little bit. It wasn't a world-ending situation. I definitely, once again, any point I took off, I gave back because of the animation qualities of the episode. But a lot of the episode was around that third eye element, and we never got the conclusion of that. I'm sure we will next week. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. Does our Dr. Anisu has it? Does Goma have it? What is the end goal with it? But we do know it's very important. Like, if you really pay attention to the opening, they have a whole thing on it. The opening has like its own little thing on it. It is the symbol for the Kempe Tai and all that kind of stuff, which I've already said like 4 times. So we know this thing is going to be very, very important. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, Goku and crew, there's a lot of stuff that happens here. So there's a couple times where they ask Neva to do something, and Neva's just like, nah, this is your fight. I'm just here as basically he's the watcher at some point. And he doesn't really step in with rare exception. And like last episode being an exception. And yeah, he just denies him out and out, or just like provides exposition, which I think is interesting. I kind of like his character just being like neutral. Well, just north of neutral. Like, not true neutral, but neutral enough to be like, okay, well, you clearly need like this little push. Here you go. And then the rest of the time, he's just kind of like, but the rest of it's up to you. I kind of like that. Sometimes he gets a little bit too... He narrates too much, if I was going to once again give it a criticism. But once again, if I'm criticizing this episode, I am nitpicking the hell out of it, because this episode absolutely did impress. Also, it's on the back. I'm literally on the back of a double watch where I just paid immense attention to this episode. It was so good. So all things kind of lead down the road, and eventually we are in the full showdown between Goku's crew and the Kempe Tai. And even at one point, Piccolo's just like, look, I can regenerate. I'm just going to go out there. Like, they're using laser guns. It's clearly already stunned Goku and Vegeta. In fact, Vegeta finally had to admit that he needed one of the recovery bugs, so he finally ate a recovery bug. So we now know at some point he's going to accept that fusion bug. We already know that that's going to happen. I'm willing to bet it's against Majin Buu and Majin Duu, but we'll see how that plays out. Or the fusion of the two of them. But nevertheless, at some point, it all just comes to a head. And everyone's kind of overwhelmed, and Neva's just like, hey, Piccolo, yeah, you can regenerate and all, but one hit to your vital organs, and you're out, dude. Ain't worth it. Just ain't worth it. Like, he just becomes an exposition machine. It's actually kind of funny. But as they're basically getting overwhelmed, we see, and I'm trying to remember his name, King, the Pansy's dad, King Kadon. And King Kadon's just like, they're throwing basically like TNT down into the into man. There was that one moment where I think most dudes watching this went, especially if you've had certain tests done. Yeah, and it was funny, and then they get blown out of the sky at random. But what's really great is that obviously, like when the smoke clears, you kind of figured it was going to happen. But King Kanan's there with everyone. Also, can I talk about? I don't think she was credited in the end credits. At least I didn't see. But that female warrior that's with their group, if she is not voiced by Keicho Yuka, I will be. They missed a perfect casting if they missed that. But nevertheless, they all just kind of unleash like this barrage on them, and Goku and Vegeta kind of go out there, and the whole crew is now just going crazy. In fact, earlier in the episode, I do want to say we saw Pansy and Glorio. Pansy and Glorio were actually like using pew pews themselves and kind of unleashing, and the animation of all that was just so absolutely rock solid. But my one argument with this final showdown was when Goku went Super Saiyan, and it took me out of it again because I was just like, I don't see these guys as any bigger of a threat than the Red Ribbon Army. And Goku, power scaling wise, even if he is in a kid's body, he is going to be more powerful than he was at that age by leaps and bounds. So it felt unnecessary for him to go Super Saiyan against the Kenpei Tai. I like, he would just vaporize them. You know what I mean? Like, it would just be crazy. But, you know, things just kind of happen, and the whole episode goes off. And obviously now we have Pansy's dad now is there with his crew. Goku and all them are, and it looks like they're now getting overpowered. So we're going to have to see what Goma does next episode, because even at the very end of the episode, they're like, okay, we'll send out the Kenpei, not the Kenpei Tai, the Kenpei, what do they call it? Toka Sentai. So we got the Kenpei Toka Sentai that the guys from last episode coming out here shortly. So it's all going to come to a head, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. We'll have to see. So episode 16 is going to be a blast. Episode 15 was amazing. Let me know what you guys thought, and I'll be back with more real soon. So make sure you guys subscribe.